Isaac Benthoff deciphered reality and revealed that what we see is only a tiny fraction of what exists. His life ended mysteriously, but his legacy still shakes the limits of science and consciousness. Stay until the end to discover why his findings remain uncomfortable and dangerous. Isaac Benthoff was not an ordinary man, an engineer, scientist, and explorer of consciousness. He dedicated his life to deciphering the invisible structure that sustains what we call reality. His voice, in a 1970 interview, did not sound like that of a distant academic, but like someone who had seen too much and knew that humanity was trapped inside an extremely narrow framework. He died in 1979 in a plane crash, just as he was heading to share his findings with Japanese scientists. For some, it was merely a tragedy. For others, a death that came at a suspiciously convenient time, sealing investigations that later ended up, in part, under CIA custody. Benthoff argued that human evolution does not stop at the physical level. It was not enough to have evolved from apes into upright beings capable of pressing buttons and driving cars. What truly mattered was the nervous system, and how it expands to perceive more and more of the reality that our senses mutilate. Seeing, hearing, and touching were only tiny cracks through which a fraction of what exists leaks through. Evolution, he said, consists of slowly widening that crack. What appears as hallucination to most people was, for him, evidence of an evolutionary leap. His example was simple. A child who claimed to see his deceased grandmother standing in the corner of the dining room. For the family, it was a delusion. For the psychiatrist, a diagnosis. For Benthoff, it was a spontaneous opening of consciousness that society rushed to suppress with medication and electroshocks. In this way, what was once called a miracle was erased. What in another era might have founded religions was now reduced to a psychotic episode. Benthoff explained that in every era there are advanced individuals, mutants of consciousness who do not fit within established normality. Some end up marginalized in hospitals, unable to integrate. Others manage to articulate their vision into works capable of transforming the world, like Newton or Darwin. The difference lies in the ability to integrate what is perceived with everyday life. That distinction turns a visionary into either a genius or a madman. But his reflection went even further. It is not the body that evolves, but the soul. We do not have a soul, he claimed. The soul has us. The body is a temporary vehicle, like a car that wears out and is replaced. What remains permanent is the entity that accumulates the information of each life, the one that crosses planes, merges with others, and ascends to levels where separation no longer exists. Benthoff spoke of levels: the physical, where everything appears fragmented; the soul level, where lines begin to overlap; and the higher spiritual level, where everything exists within everything, a state he associated with the divine. For him, this was the inevitable destiny of the species, to expand until it recognizes that material reality is merely one step. The clarity with which Benthoff explained these ideas contrasted sharply with the rigidity of the society around him. His era was obsessed with technical progress and productivity, while he spoke of a different kind of progress, the evolution of consciousness. He was not seeking faster machines or more powerful economies, but an opening that would allow humanity to see what lies beyond the narrow sensory range in which it is trapped. For Benthoff, the senses were crude extensions of the nervous system, filters that only allow through what is necessary for survival. But this limitation had turned human beings into slaves of the immediate, incapable of recognizing the vastness of reality. With evolution, he believed, those filters would open. We would see colors previously invisible, hear vibrations that currently escape us, and perceive presences that today are dismissed as fantasy. The miracle had not disappeared. It had simply been crushed by a culture that pathologizes what it does not understand. From this perspective, the stories of religious figures took on new meaning. St. Paul, for example, who described seeing a blinding light and Christ standing before him. In ancient times, such an experience became the foundation of a spiritual movement. If something similar happened in modern society, Benthoff argued, the person would end up diagnosed, medicated, and filed away as suffering from religious schizophrenia. The difference lay not in the experience itself, but in the cultural framework used to interpret it. Benthoff did not idealize these openings. He knew they could be dangerous if they were not integrated into daily life. Many people, he warned, became trapped in this expanded perception, unable to function in common reality. Still, he saw these ruptures as signs of humanity's destiny. Consciousness was not meant to remain limited. Sooner or later, willingly or not, everyone would be pushed toward that expansion. At the core of his theory was the idea that the soul evolves through bodies, not the other way around. Each life, each experience, is added to a memory that does not disappear. At the highest levels, he claimed, all souls overlap until reaching a point of omnipresence, not as a metaphor, but as a logical consequence of the evolution of consciousness. The higher self, that dimension which transcends the personal, is what truly drives the process. Benthoff insisted that this transformation does not necessarily require complex practices. The evolution of the soul occurs with or without our consent. The difference lies in speed. Techniques such as meditation, studied in the East for centuries, could accelerate the process by expanding the nervous system beyond its usual limits. Those who engaged in such practices opened doors that most people did not even know existed. His message was not superficial comfort. It was a firm declaration. Humanity was destined to cross the threshold of limited reality. The future would not be technological at its core, but spiritual. Isaac Benthoff spoke with the calm of someone who had explored invisible territories. He was not a naive mystic, but a researcher who bridged science, spirituality, and direct experience. His book Stalking the Wild Pendulum was not written as an academic treatise, but as an evolutionary map in which humanity appears in the midst of a process barely begun. The body was a temporary support, the nervous system a perceptual tool, and the soul the true core of a story without an end. This vision made him an uncomfortable figure. Science demanded material proof, religion demanded obedience to dogma, and psychiatry classified anything that did not fit its manuals. Benthoff challenged all of these structures effortlessly. He spoke of non-physical realities the way an engineer explains a mechanism. He claimed that the soul possesses us, that the eternal uses the temporary, and that accepted normality is only a mutilated fragment of what is real. His death in 1979 deepened the mystery. The plane he was traveling on crashed en route to Japan, where he was to share his research. Part of his work ended up in the hands of the CIA, fueling suspicions about the appropriation of discoveries related to altered states of consciousness, and techniques capable of reshaping the perception of real tedious to disruptive to circulate freely. His legacy is not merely theoretical. It is a warning that the reality we inhabit is a minimal slice of something far greater. From time to time, individuals like Benthoff cross that boundary and describe what exists on the other side. Some are ridiculed, others elevated to prophets, but all agree on one thing: consciousness is not destined to remain limited. In his model, true evolution does not depend on technological advancement or increased productivity. The leap occurs when the soul expands its capacity for perception, recording the invisible, uniting what appears separate, integrating levels that today seem incompatible. This destiny is inevitable, even if modern culture degrades it with diagnoses or neutralizes it with medication. Benthoff offered no comforting illusions. He stated clearly that the process will happen sooner or later. What is now called madness or miracle are signs of that evolutionary movement. The death of a body does not stop it, because what is permanent continues accumulating experience and expanding toward a state where separation no longer exists. That was his final message. Deciphering reality is not a privilege, it is the destiny of all humanity. The story of Benthoff proves that truth is uncomfortable for those who seek to control it. His message remains alive and more relevant than ever. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, activate the bell, and comment if this video impacted you.